What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another top 5 video. This is going to be a good one. This is on the top 5 players who cannot possibly exceed their fantasy draft value based on current ADPs. Right now we're using Fantasy Football Calculator, so remember, ADPs change. Fantasy Football Calculator is the most accurate at the current time, so we are going to be using that. Keep in mind, ESPN, Yahoo, those things are a little different than the ADPs right here that we may be using today. If the value on the player is higher than what we have it, they may be a good value. If it's lower, then definitely to stay away. If you have questions on that, hit us up in the comment section below. We'll definitely clarify if we think that value is either better or worse. Also, if you want to get to us really quick, make sure to join the Facebook group. We are almost full. We see people joining every day, and pretty soon we're going to have to cut it off. It's going to hurt us to say it, but it's getting full. We're getting a lot of posts in there, a lot of people posting their mock drafts. Everyone grades them. It's a good time. Also, if you haven't yet checked out the website, do so. We have some articles up there for free, and you can get and download our rankings on there too. That's enough about that. Let's get into the top 5 players that cannot possibly exceed value at their current ADP. First player should not come as much of a surprise. That's Lamar Miller. He's coming in at RB13. Now, there's just no possible way he exceeds this value. Last year, he had the largest opportunity we could have ever asked for, and he still underperformed. He had about 1,250 all-purpose yards to go along with 6 touchdowns. He did miss 2 games, and that ended up rounding him out at about RB19 on the season. Without those 2 missed games, he was right at about RB12, which is fair. One argument you could make coming in from this year as opposed to last is that how bad the offense was under Brock Osweiler. We're not going to tell you otherwise. We do think this offense will be improved without Brock. We all know Brock is bad, like real bad. The only one that doesn't think he's bad is probably Brock Osweiler himself. Even with the quarterback switch, though, this offense doesn't really change. Hopkins, we expect to have better numbers coming into this year, but the Texans really don't need to put up 30 points in a game to win. Last year, the Texans allowed the least yards in the entire league, and that was with J.J. Watt only appearing in 3 games. Clowney did step up and showed his first-round ability, and this year, they're going to have them both. The 20.5 points per game that they did allow last year, we expect probably to come closer to around 15 per game, and I don't think that's even a stretch. They have a lot of talent on this defensive side of the ball, but okay, let's get back to Miller. Normally, you'll hear us talk a lot about this, and we say take advantage of recency bias, target players coming off down years. Well, this one doesn't quite fit into that same situation. Coming in at RB13 on the season, you think you're getting a discount on a player who is safe due to his role in the offense, but the safety argument really isn't valid. D'Onta Foreman was drafted by this team in the 3rd round. He is massive. He comes in at 6'1", 249 pounds. First and second down reps will go to him, at least in the relief role. If you're telling me that they won't give this guy an opportunity to get some goal line work, at his size, you're really fooling yourself. Unless he has some sort of Matt Jones style fumbling issue, then there's no way you don't put this guy up at 3rd and goal. They've already came out and said that this situation could be a timeshare, and they're saying this already. They haven't even seen what Foreman can do in preseason yet. If Foreman comes out and lights it up during preseason, then the gap between the ADP and Miller and Foreman will probably inch closer and closer and closer. Let's be honest, Miller broke down last year. He really couldn't handle the workload, which is clear by them drafting someone like Foreman. Miller's 19 carries per game is probably going to become closer more to about 12 to 16 max. And it shouldn't really be too surprising because his carries have actually been monitored and limited his whole career. That's normally against the Houston style, but they learned from last year and are going to make the necessary changes. We do expect Miller in a limited workload to be a little bit more efficient, but he will certainly get less carries. If you can get him closer to around RB20, that's your best bet to see a return on value from Lamar Miller. Okay, so we have another running back here. This one also shouldn't be too surprising. We haven't talked too much about him in other videos though, but this player is Spencer Ware of the Kansas City Chiefs. There are a lot of similarities between the type of player and the situation of both Miller and Ware. They're both players who were given a large workload and their production just dropped off. They both also have drafted a new running back. The Chiefs drafted Kareem Hunt as opposed to D'Onta Foreman of the Texans. The only difference is we are much higher on the value of Kareem Hunt and what he can do in the future versus D'Onta Foreman. We believe there's a much stronger chance that Kareem Hunt could end up taking all of the work as opposed to just a timeshare role, but we'll talk more about Kareem Hunt and where he stands in a little bit. Let's take a look at Spencer Ware's 2016 season. Ware finished 2016 with 1,316 all-purpose yards to go along with 5 touchdowns. Now the yardage is pretty solid, however the TDs, as we know, are pretty abysmal. If you're looking for positive touchdown regression, then keep looking because the Kansas City Chiefs aren't going to be scoring that many points this this year. The offense, they just don't score many points year over year over year. That really just stems all the way down to the Andy Reid era and with Alex Smith. They, like the Texans, are extremely defensive minded. They want to manage the game as opposed to just put up points on points on points. Now, even considering the touchdown situation, we don't even expect Ware's yardage to be as high for 2017. He finished the year as RB17 last year, and now he's being valued at RB15. Where do you see anything in this situation that tells you he's going to improve on his stats from last year, or that he's any more safe last year than he's ever been? It just really doesn't make sense. If you're asking us, by midway through the season, he shouldn't even be getting the larger share of the reps anymore. Ware was hyper inefficient when getting high carries. You can just take a look at the splits. So in games that he received 13 or under carries, he averaged 5.1 yards per carry, which is great. However, when receiving over 13 carries, he only averaged 3.4 yards per carry. It's pretty clear by those splits that he just can't handle that kind of workload. Why else would they even bring in a new RB when they have both Ware and West under contract? It's pretty clear that the Chiefs are looking for the Jamal Charles replacement, and even though they released Charles, they know that Ware and West will never fill that role. Remember, Ware was drafted as a fullback initially, and he was a late round pick too. Kareem Hunt, if you ask us, could really be this year's Jordan Howard. He's 6 foot, 225, he can run and he can catch. He had nearly 2,000 all-purpose yards, including 41 receptions on his senior year in college. His sophomore year, they used him more exclusively as a rusher, and he still averaged over 8 yards per carry, compiling over 1,600 yards on the ground. This guy can do it all. Now, his measurables, they're not off the charts like some of the guys we usually tell you to watch out for, but compared to Spencer Ware, he's clearly an upgrade. His most comparable player on Player Profiler is Isaiah Crowell, and we all know how we feel about him this year. This is definitely more of an opportunity versus ability situation that he falls into a backfield with top 5 opportunity to succeed. If you're going to be drafting any player with upside in this backfield, make sure you draft Kareem Hunt. This next one, we're probably going to get a little bit of flack on, but it's Derek Carr of the Oakland Raiders. Don't get us wrong, we have no problem with Carr. I know that we always talk about drafting QBs late, and that's how you should be drafting. That's how everyone should be drafting at this point. And if you can get a value on Derek Carr late in drafts, we like him. But the thing is, right now Derek Carr is coming off the board in the middle of the 6th round at QB6. Don't get us wrong, he's a great player for fantasy and real life, and he's a real tough guy too. If you haven't seen the video yet, go look it up. He was actually mic'd up for that game, and it was gold. He was just sitting there on the ground after he took that hit, just telling his teammates that it was broken. They didn't even have to take the card out for him on the field. He just got up, got over to the sideline, and rode out of there. Showing that kind of toughness, talk about a bright future for a franchise QB. So back to fantasy, QB6, that's a really hefty price, especially for one who's never thrown over 4,000 yards. He is very efficient. He's essentially a lock for over a 60% completion rate, and in the red zone is really where he shines. His connection with Crabtree is just unmatched. I hope that translates over to this year too, and I'm sure it will. But the thing is, just take a look at the top 4 quarterbacks who are essentially a lock to finish top 5. You have Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Andrew Luck, and Drew Brees. That's going to round out the clear top 4. That leaves only one spot for Derek Carr to potentially exceed his draft value, and that's position 5. There are so many quarterbacks out there that could potentially take that spot. So who's in this quarterback race? I'd say Matthew Stafford, Matt Ryan, who's coming off a phenomenal year. You have Russell Wilson, who you can never count out. Cam Newton, I'm not a fan of him. I'll never draft him, but he's done it before. Marcus Mariota, and Jameis Winston's an up-and-comer too. All these players have the potential to end as a QB1, and it's a tight race to see who finishes in that 5th place. In my opinion, if I had to pick, Kirk Cousins is probably the best chance to finish in that 5 to 6 QB slot. You have already Kirk Cousins, who came in 83 yards short of throwing for 5,000 yards. That's a milestone right there. Now, Cousins did finish in, I think, QB6, and that's including him only having 25 touchdowns, which led to him not finishing higher. And we all know the reason for that is because he didn't have big bodies when it came into the red zone. Whenever Reed was on the field, Reed was getting touchdowns, which meant Kirk Cousins was getting touchdowns. This year, they're now going to be implementing Reed, Pryor, and Josh Doctson at the same time. Those are all big bodies. Last year, the 3 starting wide receivers were all under 5'10". That doesn't help in the red zone. So for Carr, I know that he had the injury, but I'm not really concerned with his injury. I don't think that's going to be a reason to hold him back. It's not like Paul George's injury, where he had that long timetable for a return and to come back to full health. The one that Carr had, it's really an easy injury, and The fact that he is more of a pocket passer as opposed to a rusher is really going to help him come back faster. Some people think of Carr and they think that he is a rusher, but he's not. Don't think of it that way. He's a strict pocket passer. The most rushing yards he's ever had in a season is about 138. Another thing that's kind of been disappointing with Carr has been his consistency. In last season, 6 of his 15 games, he had under 13 fantasy points. I don't need to tell you, but as a quarterback, you don't want that. He doesn't play well within his division either. Excluding a game against the Chargers where he scored 22 points, he averaged 8.4 in the rest of them. Now, he had a few boom weeks over 20, but when you want to start in QB, you don't want to have to worry about getting points from that position. Now, just to reiterate, we're not saying don't draft Carr. He's a solid pick. However, as an early QB target at QB6, we can't see him exceeding that value. We would suggest to target Carr more along the lines of QB 8 to 12. At the current ADP, better targets are Cousins at 10 or Stafford at 15. So if you're in a bind and you're thinking of taking Carr, just wait a couple more rounds and grab one of those guys. Now for the tight end position, we have O.J. Howard, the rookie out of Tampa Bay, and I'm not really going to talk too much on O.J. Howard. He comes in at tight end 11, but the reason I'm not going to talk too much on him is because we made a whole video on rookie tight ends, and we talked about him in there, and just rookie tight ends in general. You just don't want to draft them. Now, don't get us wrong. This is probably one of the best, if not the best, rookie tight end classes of our time. But rookie tight ends are literally wasted picks. Only one rookie has ever been over 630 receiving yards, and that's just scary to think. We all know this position is super thin, but why would you take a rookie? And we're obviously not going to be drafting a backup tight end, so the rookie tight ends in general just all hype. O.J. Howard does have the most insane measurables, and he comes into what you would think is a good spot on the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers did make Cameron Brate, who is essentially a nobody, into a solid weekly starter down the stretch. Brate is still there though, and having him on the team actually hurts Howard's value. If by the time the season rolls around, if Brate is a better pass blocker, then there are a lot of plays drawn up specifically to have the tight end block. That just means he's not going to see the field, and that's going to instantly hurt his play time and his production. You already know, if he is on the field, he's not going to be the first read, and if he's on limited snaps, where do you see the upside? Everyone is super high on Deshaun Jackson, obviously high on Mike Evans, and they also have 2 great receiving running backs. You're basically relying on touchdowns with Howard, but how many can Jameis Winston realistically throw? Gronkowski had one of the best rookie seasons for the tight end, and he had 10 receiving touchdowns to go with 546 receiving yards. Gronk's rookie season wouldn't have even cracked the top 10 last year, and that's including last year was one of the worst tight end seasons that we've had recently. So basically with this pick at tight end 11, you're saying Howard has to have the best rookie season of all time to at least exceed his value by 1 spot, and that's if the tight end position is as weak as it was in 2016. Now, why would you go and do that to yourself? It just doesn't make sense. Then factor in if he has a big game within the first 2 weeks, you know how hard it's going to be to drop him even if his production is 2-3 points per game. Let someone else draft him and go for a player with much more upside. A better target in his range would be someone like Hunter Henry coming in at tight end 9 or Eric Ebron coming in at tight end 16. Alright guys, so there's one more player, and it's a wide receiver, and it's one we have not been fond of since he came into league, and that is Kelvin Benjamin of the Carolina Panthers. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you know we just don't like Benjamin at all, and it's for good reason, and the stats back it. He's coming off the board at wide receiver 27. Last season, he finished as wide receiver 28, and that's including his boom games he had to start the season. If you take that off, his per game average is just abysmal. We honestly think that if Kelvin Benjamin wasn't a first round draft pick, he may not even be a starter at this point. He is really bad. Now he's coming into training camp, he's severely overrated, and we've seen his target share steadily decreasing. The Panthers are just liking him less and less. Now, wide receiver 27, that's a 5th round pick, and he's going next to a bunch of studs. McCaffrey, Curtis Samuel, these are all players coming in, taking targets away from him. That's on top of the fact that Kelvin Benjamin only had 1 double-digit target game the whole second half of the season. Now, the Panthers did pick up his 5th-year option, but that doesn't mean he's going to be staying with the team long-term, and I wouldn't be surprised if they walked away. Just watch the tape on this guy. He has trouble getting open and trouble with contested catches. For a guy that's 6'5", he should be a huge red zone option and should be able to muscle the ball away, but he just doesn't. The only receivers you should really be targeting on the Panthers would be a late round flyer on Devin Funchess, or maybe Greg Olsen if you're able to get a great value on him. Now, we're not super high on Curtis Samuel, but just the fact that he's coming in means less targets for Benjamin. Remember, Cam Newton isn't one of those quarterbacks who's going to throw for 600 attempts. That's just not what this offense is about. One thing that really ticks us off is that players like Jamison Crowder, Willie Snead, and Stephon Diggs are all going behind Benjamin. That should be a crime. At wide receiver 27, you're already banking on improvement from last year, and when you can get players like that after Benjamin, it all just makes no sense. Nick just made a video yesterday about the passing league narrative, and it just outlines how important it is to hit on these mid-round receivers. We're also going to be doing one in the future, so keep an eye out. It's going to be on running backs and how important it is to hit on an early one that's a stud, but all this ties in together. Now, there is an honorable mention for a player that we're not high on, and that's LeGarrette Blount. LeGarrette Blount comes in to fill that Ryan Matthews role, but he's being drafted higher than Ryan Matthews finished in each of the 2 years that he started. More to come on that. The offseason's still early. You're going to hear about all these players and more in the coming weeks, so keep an eye out on all of our videos. So that's going to do it for our top 5 players who are not going to exceed the value of their ADP. If you liked this video, make sure to toss it a big thumbs up, check out our website, join the Facebook group, and we'll catch you on the next one.